Modern state capacity relies on two pillars: precise data and the ability to rapidly adapt to technological and economic pressures. Without them, governments fails. For the July 14, 2026 briefing, we are unpacking 6 current affairs developments that test those exact pillars. We can map these topics across 2 domains: General Studies Paper 3 for Economy and Security and Paper 2 for Polity and Governance. On the economic front, we begin with India's agricultural reporting breakdown, followed by stalled U.S. trade negotiations. Next, we examine AI-driven cyber threats in the financial sector and analyze June's retail inflation spike. Finally, in Polity and Governance, we review the Supreme Court's draft AI regulations and a crucial ruling on procedural fairness in Assam's citizenship hearings. These 6 isolated events present a unified challenge. They test how a modernizing state balances the deployment of new technologies with the protection of domestic economic interests and constitutional rights. Macroeconomic stability absolutely requires accurate agricultural reporting. The Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation has just warned that India's data collection systems for crop estimates are suffering from severe gaps. The basic math of agricultural statistics is straightforward. Land area sown multiplied by yield per hectare equals total crop production. But if delayed reports or staff shortages introduce errors into area or yield, it creates a cascading error in the final estimate. Historically, the government relied on crop-cutting experiments, where small selected sections of a field are physically harvested and weighed to estimate overall yield. Today, these physical methods suffer from poor coordination and unreliability. Operating on blind data forces the state into poor procurement planning. It causes unnecessary or delayed imports, disrupts crop insurance compensation, and triggers food price inflation. To fix this, India requires a hybrid statistical model managed through the Unified Portal for Agricultural Statistics. This combines digital crop surveys and satellite imagery with GPS-based field observations and physically verified crop-cutting experiments. Closing this data gap is a prerequisite for executing targeted drought relief, managing minimum support price procurement, and guaranteeing national food security. In international trade, India has reportedly refused to sign an interim trade agreement with the United States under the terms currently on the table. These negotiations are paused, not permanently abandoned. Indian diplomats are seeking a more equitable framework that guarantees tariff predictability for exporters. The proposed deal presented a structural imbalance, demanding permanent Indian concessions for marginal export benefits without guarantees against future U.S. tariffs. India is maintaining a defensive posture. Subsidized American imports pose a direct risk to domestic dairy, cereal, and oilseed producers. Beyond standard taxes, the government is also navigating non-tariff barriers. Restrictions like aggressive quality standards, licensing rules, and certification requirements that effectively block Indian goods from foreign markets. Increasing market access for engineering goods cannot come at the cost of dismantling domestic agricultural stability and exposing small farmers to foreign competition. According to the newly released Digital Threat Report, cyber attacks against India's banking, financial services, and insurance sector are escalating rapidly. Threat actors are now weaponizing artificial intelligence to automate breaches, outpacing the speed at which human defenders can identify and patch system vulnerabilities. This creates a condition known as AI asymmetry. Criminals are leveraging machine learning to deploy highly convincing deepfakes, automate credential theft, and execute personalized financial fraud at scale. A successful systemic breach in the BFSI sector carries severe downstream risks. It can disrupt UPI payment networks, intercept rural direct benefit transfers, and expose millions of personal identities. As the Indian economy digitizes its financial infrastructure, mitigating this asymmetry through continuous layered defense mechanisms is required to protect capital and prevent the collapse of public trust. Turning to macroeconomic indicators, India's retail inflation has officially crossed the Reserve Bank's mandated target for the first time in 17 months. This chart illustrates the trajectory. In June 2026, retail inflation rose to 4.38%, up from 3.93% in May. However, the RBI's defined tolerance band dictates an acceptable variance between 2 and 6%, keeping this spike safely within institutional limits. The primary driver behind this specific increase is food inflation, which surged to 5.32%. This was triggered by uneven monsoon rainfall and compounded by geopolitical tensions, creating uncertainty in international crude oil pricing. Reaching the 4% target under these specific conditions does not automatically compel the central bank to aggressively hike the repo rate. Because the pressure stems from agricultural supply shocks and volatile weather patterns, it demands precise logistical and supply-side interventions rather than immediate, blunt monetary tightening. Shifting to polity and governance, the Supreme Court of India published its first draft regulations detailing how artificial intelligence may be deployed within the judiciary. The draft rules permit AI strictly for efficiency-driven tasks, like translating documents, transcribing proceedings, and summarizing legal research. However, assessing witness credibility or determining case outcomes is expressly forbidden. This boundary limits AI hallucination, generating false legal citations, and prevents algorithmic bias from affecting verdicts. The draft regulations enforce a strict human-in-the-loop framework. Every piece of AI-generated output must be reviewed and verified by a qualified judge before it enters the official record. Machine learning can process judicial backlogs at high speeds, but algorithmic probability cannot replace the human reasoning required to protect constitutional liberty. We close with a critical ruling from the Supreme Court, which recently set aside the decisions of foreigners' tribunals regarding 27 residents of Assam. It is important to clarify that the court did not declare these individuals to be Indian citizens. It simply nullified previous findings and ordered authorities to properly consider the evidence. This ruling enforces natural justice. It is the absolute right to receive proper notice, present documents, and receive an impartial decision. These requirements are grounded in Article 14, protecting against arbitrary state action, and Article 21, guaranteeing personal liberty through fair legal procedures. The historical cutoff date for migration into Assam remains mathematically strict, but defending that border means little if the tribunals enforcing it fail to uphold a citizen's basic right to a fair and lawful hearing. Let's look back at the master dashboard. Whether securing agricultural data, defending trade parameters, mitigating AI-driven financial fraud, or enforcing judicial accountability, the modern Indian state is undergoing a massive structural stress test. Successful governance across both the economy and the polity now demands absolute data fidelity and non-negotiable constitutional fairness. Review the metrics, understand the structural variables, and prepare for the cascading effects of these policies.